Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and today we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite 40K race, the Tau Empire. We're going to be looking at their warfare. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We push Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions, please comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. If you guys want to support us, link is down in the description. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on Tau warfare. Tau warfare is almost exclusively carried out by the Fire Caste. These military forces are known as Hunter Cadres and are similar in size and battlefield role to the Imperial Guard Company. Hunter Cadres are primarily made up of Tau from the same planetary sabt. Auxiliary forces are drawn from alien races within the Tau Empire, and some Hunter Cadres can include Kroot warriors, Vespid stingwings, and human Guevesa amongst their ranks. The Tau prefer long-range combat over melee combat, absolutely hating close combat, viewing it as a primitive and barbaric way of warfare. A Tau Fire Warrior's primary weapon is known as a pulse rifle, which can be switched for a pulse carbine. A pulse rifle fires energized particles which quickly break down and are projected as a pulse of superheated plasma. Pulse carbines, also carried by Fire Warrior teams, sacrifice range for portability, but incorporate an underslung photon grenade launcher. These photon grenades powerful defensive weapons that not only release a powerful burst of light, but also a sonic shockwave that can temporarily stun the target. There are two primary Tau tactics, known as the Monka, which is the killing blow, and the Kayun, which means patient hunter. The Monka is a carefully planned attack designed to wipe out critical enemy defenses or units in a single well-placed strike. Once the strongest point of enemy resistance is crushed, the remainder of the force can generally be finished off easily. The Kayun is essentially an ambush where the enemy is drawn by use of a lure into a carefully prepared killing zone. The Monka is generally known to utilize more mobile support in vehicles, while Kayun relies more on advanced infantry tactics and quick attacks. To get a better understanding of Tau warfare, let's take a look at some notable conflicts.
Since first entering space, the Tau had experienced success after success. Guided by their ethereals, each caste had overcome every obstacle yet encountered, and none could doubt the Tau's ascendancy. On the far side of the Damocles Gulf, however, the Tau faced an enemy unlike any other, and the epic clash that followed heralded the beginning of a new age of war. The Tau Empire's first introduction to humanity came not with the ruling Imperium, but with the dissident elements that were operating on the fringe of that mighty dominion. The Imperium of Man was the largest realm in the galaxy, although much of its sprawling borders had never been explored or had been forgotten over its history. The region of space around the Damocles Gulf was such an area, a wilderness where the Tau Empire had found room to take root. The Tau first encountered free captains, pirates, and lost human colonies that had regressed so that they had long forgotten their ancient origins and any connection to their distant birth world. Those initial contacts ranged from friendly trade negotiations to instant hostility. It was some time before the Water Caste came to grasp the fact that the humans they had encountered were merely lost remnants or willing outcasts of an incomprehensibly large galactic empire. Worlds claimed by the dissident humans were soon annexed into the Tau Empire, but there was much debate on how to approach those planets still bound to the Imperium. In typical fashion, the high-ranking caste leaders debated the situation before the ethereals. To some of the High Council, the Imperium seemed so powerful that overt aggression might lead to a war they could not win. The leaders of the Fire Caste called for war, but it was Anva, an ethereal second in authority only to the ethereal supreme, Anwe, who determined the plan. The Water Caste were to integrate themselves into human worlds loyal to the Imperium, working their way into the courts of planetary governors. Eventually, a score of worlds within the Imperium were trading with the Tau, even in preference to each other. Alien goods, and especially coveted Earth caste technology, flowed through these markets in blatant disregard of Imperial law. The time soon came to initiate the second phase of Anva's instructions. Upon those worlds that were deemed ripe, Water caste envoys whispered well-rehearsed words into willing ears. The seeds of rebellion that had been long cultivated now bore fruit, as one by one the planetary governors declared themselves and their worlds free of the shackles of the Imperium's totalitarian rule. It had taken decades to achieve, but the Tau spread more rapidly with fewer losses than even the most brilliant military campaigns could have achieved. The Imperium's response to such sedations were slow in coming, but when it finally arrived, it was characteristically brutal. The Tau were designated as a highly dangerous xeno-species, and the Damocles Gulf Crusade was launched to expel them from the region. The Imperial forces were vast, based around a dozen capital ships, and included 19 regiments of Astra Militarum and 5 provisional companies of Space Marines, made up from a dozen chapters. The initial battles were stunningly victorious for the Imperium, as the powers of their fleet and the suddenness of their attack smashed isolated outposts and eliminated outlying colonies. In a short period of intense conflict, the Tau were pushed back across the Damocles Gulf, although in the later stages of this drive, the Imperium's victories were not so easily won. The planets from which the Tau were driven were subjected to harsh pacification. The Inquisition descended upon the remaining human populations and meted out cruel punishments to those who had rejected the Emperor's tenets. Meanwhile, the Crusade followed the retreating Tau across the Damocles Gulf, entering the Tau Empire itself. Most within the Imperium saw the Tau as just another disgusting xenoswarm to be obliterated, but a few of the deep thinkers were unpleasantly surprised by this new race. Although no match in close quarters, the aliens had proven tactically savvy, bold masters of ambush and counterattack warfare. Their technology was clearly advanced, and some weapons, such as the railgun, were rightfully feared. Next to a hive world, the Tau cities seemed like paradises of efficiency. Many, particularly the Space Marine captains, found that the Tau were honorable adversaries and were worthy of respect. Inquisitor Gallius was more alarmed by the Tau than any of his brethren. What struck him most about them was their technological prowess and unwavering belief in progress. It reminded him of what he had read of mankind in its glory days, a time known as the Dark Age of technology. Although much of that period is unknown, some believe that mankind's intellectual hubris and unworthy reliance on machine and artificial intelligence brought about the dreaded Age of Strife, a nightmare time of horror and violence. If the Tau were indeed upon the same path, then they represented a larger threat to the Imperium of man, and indeed the whole galaxy, than any would easily believe. The first sign of the invasion upon the Tau Empire came from the scanners of Prien, the outpost planet of the Dalith Sept. After picking up unusual readings, the Tau switched to long-range optics and were shocked to see great rent openings in space, with the massive Imperial battleships and their supporting craft emerging out of nowhere. Although the Tau fleet and the Prien's well-armed orbital station took a toll upon the Imperial Navy, the way was soon cleared for the Crusade to advance toward Dalith Prime. In the largest conflict of the war, Imperial forces landed upon Dalith Prime. In this case, they were not taking on a recently converted Imperial world or a newly founded colony, but instead were treading upon a heavily populated Tau Sept world. The Imperial drop was contested by swarms of atmospheric fighters, but was eventually successful in establishing a beachhead. Soon the Imperium's ground forces, with Titans and armored formations as the spearhead, plowed relentlessly toward the cities of Galbrin. The Imperial advance was stalled by storms of missiles raining down from beyond the hills. When units were detached to drive back the Tau spotters, they were instead engaged by jump troops protected by cloaking fields. Each time Imperial forces attempted to regain momentum, they were met by the timely counterattacks of the Firecast. These thrusts were orchestrated with precision and deadly effect by Commander Farsight and Shadowsun, two heroes of the Tau Empire, who would solidify their burgeoning reputation by masterminding the defense of Dalith Prime. Night was the worst for the invading forces, as under the cover of darkness, Tau in advanced battlesuits made swift, hard-hitting strikes. With the Tau's superior optic technology, major losses were inflicted upon the Imperial armor, while little damage was suffered in return. Mankind's elite Space Marines attempted to land behind the Tau's line and regain the initiative, but they were defeated by teams of heavy battlesuits whose formidable firepower quickly downed their transports. With more Tau reinforcement arriving at the front, the Imperial fleet's ability to hold orbit became tenuous. The Imperium's momentum was spent. They were finally forced to withdraw, leaving much of their equipment behind. It is conceivable that the Tau could have encircled the Crusaders, but at the Ethereal's insistence, the Watercast opened a dialogue and agreed to a truce, allowing the invaders an unimpeded retreat. After this great battle at Daliath, an uneasy peace descended upon both sides of the war-torn Damocles Gulf. Even as many in the Imperium readied themselves for another offensive, more pressing concerns called for a hasty redeployment of mankind's gathered armies. The Imperium had demonstrated but a fraction of its power, and that had proven enough to hurl the Tau Empire backward. Yet the Tau had learned from this engagement as well. The Firecast gained the invaluable insight into mankind's methods. They had fought a foe that, like the Orcs, was willing to absorb huge losses, but unlike the Greenskins, the Imperial forces used a wide range of tactics and employed an expansive and impressive arsenal. In the aftermath, the Ethereals deemed a full study of captives and recovered equipment. The Earthcast declared much of the technology to be inferior, and some was simply too unstable to contemplate using, such as Imperial plasma devices. There were some eye-opening discoveries, however, and the Earthcast was in absolute wonder over a warp engine they obtained. With no knowledge or understanding of the realm known as the warp, they found the strange apparatus utterly unfathomable. To their further frustration, the captured humans that had operated it seemed to possess no actual understanding of its mechanisms, running the equipment solely through the application of superstitious rituals and chantings. The Tau Empire would continue to use similar methods in the years to come. Decades of Watercast works converted many human worlds in the Lagan system. With the help of an expeditionary force, the star system was actually deemed a grade Class 1 colony, moving steadily towards becoming a full-fledged sept. However, all this preparation came to ruin, as this sector became a war zone targeted for Xenos cleansing by the Ultramarine Space Marine chapter. Tau colonists were killed in the thousands. The Tau Empire even attempted to use more aggressive force on the Imperium, in a much smaller scale. Known as the Nimbosa Annexation, Commander Brightsword, a student of Farsight's way of war, led an attack to claim the Imperial world of Nimbosa. By the time the Imperium brought reinforcements, the Tau were prepared to defend their new planet. The fighting culminated with the infamous Koloth Gorge Massacre, where the forces of the Astra Militarum were so brutally slaughtered that Brightsword was censured and summoned back to Tau due to the remorselessness of his act. Since that attack, the planet had changed hands several more times and remained a constant war zone. As the Tau Empire and the Imperium continued to clash, many wars are fought, and the Tau Empire learns more and more that humanity is truly corrupt at its core. An insertion contingent of Tau Pathfinders was deployed on the Kanmon's Lock, a forge world dedicated to the construction of small arms and munitions. They escort several Watercast insurrection specialists, whose task is to incite rebellion amongst the hive-bound working class. To the Tau's surprise, reports say that the planet's underclass have recently been stockpiling contraband weapons for an upcoming insurrection against their cruel masters. This information is in fact accurate, but it masks the true horror of the situation. A hostile cult known as the Disciples of the Bleeding Star have infiltrated the labor unions of the Cadmon's Lock, spreading the worship of their strange gods. The Tau forces are greeted with a hail of autogun fire, and several warriors and diplomats are snatched away into the darkness of the Hive City's undertunnels by hulking razor-clawed figures. Surrounded on all sides by mutated demi-humans, the contingent survivors are forced to battle their way to the surface of the Forge World for extraction. Before they depart, they activate a wideband hollow signal that is picked up by the planet's Adeptus Mechanicus administration. Skitarii forces are dispatched to the Underhive to investigate, and an open warfare breaks out as they discover the extent of the cultist infestation. The Tau Hive orbit recon probes perform a thorough analysis during the ensuing carnage. The Tau Empire is a technological marvel, filled with innovation and progress. Its goal is to advance through the galaxy and enrich the planets and peoples it encounters. The Orc race is one of the galaxy's most savage and brutal forces, with the sole purpose of stomping through the galaxy to crush and pillage everything in its wake. Both forces are the Milky Way galaxy's most antithetical Xenos. The history of each race has been scarred by each other's presence, and this rivalry starts with the rise of the Tau Empire. The Tau first discovered the Orcs on the planet surrounding their first major colony, Town. Signals soon arrived, reporting Orc tribes scattered across every star system they investigated. The sophisticated Tau quickly learned to pinpoint the telltale orc signatures on their scanning equipment, and it appeared with alarming regularity that on every planet, moon, asteroid belt, and virtually anywhere that could support life, the orcs' presence was there. It took many battles before the Tau at last abandoned their futile attempt to absorb the orcs in the manner that had proven so successful with a dozen other alien civilizations. There was simply no bargaining with such creatures. The Ethereals themselves eventually conceded that these aliens were a lost cause, and amended the protocols to forego any attempt to integrate the orcs into the Tau Empire, declaring at last that the greater good was actually served by eliminating the greenskins. In their first prolonged campaign against the orcs, the Tau suffered many defeats, but were ultimately able to eradicate the greenskins, thanks in part to the Earthcast refinement of the first pulse rifle. This period of bloody war became known as the Campaign of Cleansing. Years later, in order to combat the orcs, the fortunate alliance between the Tau and the Kroot was formed. Within a decade, the Watercast had established embassies upon Pac, the capital world of the Kroot realm. As the Tau Empire continued to grow, a massive orc fleet invaded Viorla Sapt, but it was defeated by a masterful campaign. Viorla annually passed through a gap between its two stars, a time called the Trial by Fire. It causes deadly plasma storms to ravage the planet, whose inhabitants survive by closing off protective domes around their cities. Warlord Goskrak and his fleet were lured into the storm, where they were utterly destroyed by the raging plasma radiation. Even after this tremendous defeat, the greenskins continued to assault the Tau Empire. This time, it was the Sept world of Fyovasha. At the time of the defense of Fyovasha, Ethereal Anshi was already nearly 40 years of age, old for a Tau, and was looking forward to spending his last years on the Paradise Sept of Autala. A much-respected life was behind him, many long years spent helping to expand the Empire into space, by providing guidance for the Tau in his care. Hailing from the hot-blooded Sept of Viorla, Anshi had perhaps a better understanding of the Firecast and their ways of war than other Ethereals. It is said that on occasion, he went as far as to join them in their battle rituals, honing his skills with the Honor Blade to a level where even a Shas Vray could not pierce his defenses. His skill with a blade had reached the level where spirit, weapon, and body had achieved complete harmony. In what was supposed to be his last assignment, Anshi led a Tau colony force to a world he named Kaltir, the newest world in the expanding Tau Empire. Infested by feral orcs, initial progress in claiming the world was slow, but under Anshi's guidance, fire warrior teams were soon able to push the orcs back from the main areas of Tau settlements. Within 4 years, the world was flourishing. The Fyo, or the Earthcast, built many fine towns across the main continental mass. Fyovasha was one such town, a mining outpost in the low foothills of the mineral-rich mountain range, some 400 miles to the east of the capital. On a tour of inspection of the outlying towns, Anshi and his bodyguards became trapped in Fyovasha when a horde of feral orcs surrounded the town and launched a surprise attack to capture the mine workings. The existing garrison of Fyovasha had been augmented by Anshi's fire warrior bodyguards, and the orcs were cut down in their hundreds. Early in the fighting, the Shavray of the fire warriors was beheaded, cut down by an enormous orc knob. The loss of this heroic warrior sent a surge of panic through the ranks of the Tau warriors, and it seemed as if though their defenses would crumble. Anshi leapt in front of the knob and cut him in two with one blow of his honor blade, planting the haft of his weapon between the shore halves of the corpse. Hearted by the Ethereal's brave defiance, the fire warriors' line steadied, and they threw the orcs back. Again and again the orcs attacked Fyovasha, and each time, Anshi led the defenders in battle, fighting alongside his warriors and spurring them to unheard feats of valor. He dispatched stealth-armored warriors and a member of the Corps, or the Aircast, to take word to the capital, as he knew that against so many orcs, it would only be a matter of time until they were overrun. The battle raged on, the Tau defenders silhouetted by the flames of burning buildings. The fire warriors were fighting at the limit of courage and endurance, held together by the indomitable will of Anshi. Every time their line bent back under the orc assault, Anshi was there, his flashing honor blade a shimmering blur of silver steel as he cut down orcs by the dozens. Anshi moved like quicksilver, dodging killing blows, twisting and weaving through the air in a graceful ballet of death. Wherever he struck, orcs died, and soon none would go near him,
So fearful were they of this warrior who could not be killed. Eventually the Tau were forced to pull back to the inner perimeter of the defensive walls which the Fyo had constructed, and there they prepared for the next assault. An-Shi stood in the ranks with the surviving fire warriors, hoping that the Corps had managed to carry word of his situation to the capital. The Greenskins attacked again, and though the fire warriors slew scores of orcs with every volley, they simply could not kill enough to prevent them from reaching the walls. All through the burning heat of the day, orcs charged the defensive walls, the mound of dead before it growing every second as the fire warriors killed with grim efficiency. The walls were beginning to give in place, and the orcs poured through these gaps whenever they appeared, swamping Tau battlesuits and dragging them to the ground. Each time the orcs formed a wedge within a breach, An-Shi led a counterattack to hurl them from the compound. As dusk approached, less than 50 fire warriors remained alive, and both forces sensed that the end was near. As the orcs massed for the final attack, An-Shi ordered a retreat into the barricade shrine at the town center, knowing that there were too few of them to hold the full length of the wall. The fire warriors readied their last clip of ammunition, while the workers of the Fyo caste took up their picks and shovels, ready to fight in hand-to-hand combat. With a roar of pure hatred, the orcs swarmed over the wall and into the compound, burning and destroying everything in their path. Fire warriors shot from prepared loopholes, thinning the first wave of orcs, but unable to prevent it from reaching the building. Orcs set about the door to the shrine with giant axes, climbing the walls to smash through the roof and screaming their bestial war cries. The first orcs to enter the shrine were killed swiftly, but there were always more pushing their way inside. An-Shi fought at the shrine doors as they were finally ripped from their frame. Together with the last of his fire warriors, An-Shi stood ready to fight, his honor blade cleaving the air before him in long sweeping slashes. If they were to die, then they would die together. Suddenly, the orcs were thrown into silhouettes as a series of rippling detonations exploded behind them. Sweeping through the flames came the bulky form of dozens of devilfish troop carriers, guns chattering with deadly firepower as team after team of fire warriors poured from their interiors. Alerted by the Corps, the full wrath of the Tau now fell upon the orcs' rear. Lumbering broadside battlesuits sprayed the orcs with plasma fire, cutting them down in droves as hammerhead tanks blasted huge holes in the orc mobs. Within the hour, the orcs were either dead or fleeing, and the leaders of the recently arrived fire warrior Cadre found An-Shi still standing at the shrine doors, his honor blade slicked with orc blood, a handful of his bodyguards left alive. Despite the terrible casualties, the defense of Fyo-Vashj was hailed as a great victory. The ethereal shrine still stood, and the mine workings were still in the Tau hands. The survivors of the siege hailed An-Shi as a hero, the fire warriors pledging to serve him for the rest of their lives. News of the victory soon reached the ethereals on Tau, and rather than allow An-Shi to spend his remaining years on Altala, it was decreed that he lead fresh expeditions to expand the Tau Empire. There would be no peaceful retirement for An-Shi. In another part of the Empire, a decade-long war in which a populous Tau colony was besieged by a resurgent orc horde. It was especially notable for the rise of the exemplary pure-type protege named Commander Farsight, who swiftly followed in his master's footsteps to become a vaunted hero of the Tau Empire and a key element of the High Council's campaigns of propaganda. Future events would cause a schism between Commander Farsight and the Tau Empire. That is until an orc invasion under Warlord Grog advanced into the Tau Empire. The populated Tau world of Atari Vo bore the brunt of the attack, for the orcs were finally defeated by the combined forces of Dalith Sept and, the surprise to many, Commander Farsight and his separatists. The orcs were defeated, but unfortunately not eradicated, which led to the Great War of Confederation. Led by the Vior-La, many Septs combined to hold off the single largest orc wall to have ever penetrated the Tau Empire. This campaign was also notable for the brilliant tactics and battle records of Shazo, recently awoken from stasis, who then earned the name Shadow Sun. Centuries after this tremendous campaign, a colossal orc gargant terrorized the cities of Hulan. Its black iron armor seemed impervious to even the most intense pulse fire and missile bombardments, and its formidable array of solid-shot cannons and projectile launchers annihilated entire Firecast cadres in mere minutes. The sadistic laughter of its orc pilots boomed out of its gargant's enormous Vox arrays as it crushed entire buildings to rubble
with each swing of its great metal arms. Swarms of greenskins followed in the wake of this behemoth, bellowing praise to the orc gods of war. Only the Borkon Earthcast scientist, Tulan, and his experimental weapons division stand in the way of this monstrosity. Tulan ordered the deployment of 6 KV-128 Storm Surge weapon platforms, each armed with multi-phase locked pulse arc cannons, a new refinement of these devastating devices. Even though these were enormous Storm Surge ballistic suits, they were dwarfed by the sheer size of the orc gargant. But when they fired their arc cannons simultaneously, the beams converged, melding into a ray of destructive energy as wide as a star scraper. This battering ram of pure annihilation burns through the gargant's metal torso, setting off a chain reaction of detonations that tore the massive construct apart. And with that, Tulan marked the first field test of his new technology as an impressive success, though the power of the channeled plasma energy entirely immolated 3 of the 6 Storm Surge platforms. In another notable campaign against the orcs, known as the Blooding, elite city fighting Cadres from Sacia were sent to reclaim the colony of Olmi from an orc infestation. Advancing street by street, the breacher teams utilized airburst marker light flares and overwhelming aerial support to identify and destroy the largest congregation of greenskins. So brutal was the close quarter fighting that the Seps Firecast referred to this campaign as Mont Yern, the Blooding. The survivors of the war were held in the highest regard. Although the Tau's unity has proven effective against the orcs, there have been many orc warlords that have bested the technologically cohesive Tau Empire. On the Tau Sept world of Kelishan, the Earthcast engineers proudly reveal an immense new colony speeding craft. This monolithic spacefaring vessel is named in the Tau language as Hope's Light. On its maiden voyage, and with over 300,000 Tau colonists and warriors on board, Hope's Light is boarded by the orc fleet of Megaboss Mork Rog and lost with all hands. For the next decade, the Kelishan Sept faces brutal raids from Mork Rog's vast new looted warship, Tau Killa. After a temporary parley with Badrock's freebooters in the Trugrot system, Warlord Nazdrak turns his war towards the Farside Enclaves. The mighty Bad Moon's war leader has heard the tales of the War of Daka, and is dead set on proving that his lads are far shootier than some shitty bunch of pirate gits. Besides which, Nazdrak has now heard of the Storm Surge artillery walkers, and is intent on building one into a Stampa. Soon enough, Commander Farsight and his Tau followers find their worlds beset by a fresh new peril. Orc warlords, fighting against the newly established empire of the Tau, have often found themselves sorely outgunned. This has always been irritating to the orc forces involved, and sometimes even resulted in greenskin retreats, the warlords muttering to themselves that the Tau have no idea how to fight proper. One exception is Walgrog, a crusade of vengeance that extended deep into the territory of the renegade Tau commander Farsight. Grog Ironteeth, the war chief of Alsanta, had become one of the Tau Empire's most deadly foes. His fleet engaged the Kroot war spheres, drifting through the space lanes of Daleth. Grog had found that the Kroot made excellent opponents. They were mercenary aliens who preferred to engage at close quarters, and they could be relied upon to provide a vicious brawl upon which the orcs thrive. Just as the two races were settling in for a protracted campaign of head-bashing, the Tau came to aid their Kroot allies. Grog was furious. He declared war upon the Tau, determined to show them that the orcs were not to be trifled with. Unfortunately, the war chief's initial invasion of the Tau Sept world did not go according to plans. His armies were outclassed and outgunned again and again. Though he had an entire empire of orcs to throw into battle, he found that their numbers were being whittled away with worrying speed. Grog decided to take a different tactic, enlisting the help of as many tank busters, flash kits, and freebooters as he could, including the mercenary Captain Badrock. With this upgrade to his arsenal, he prepared to battle once more. Grog encountered even fiercer resistance as he penetrated the Farside enclaves in the north of the Tau Empire, but this time he was more than ready. Ludas, carrying crackling death guns converted from captured Tau weaponry, exchanged lethal volleys of fire with the Tau gun lines. Battle wagons and looted hammerhead tanks pounded the massed ranks of the Tau fire warriors with heavy munition, as Grog and his boys stomped towards the enemy gun lines. Deathcopters corkscrewed through the skies in aerial battles with battlesuit teams preventing them from disengaging. Most impressive of all, Captain Badrock and his flashkits lit up the night, annihilating team after team of desperate Tau warriors with their snaz guns. The carnage was only stopped by the arrival of a Manta missile destroyer, which mercilessly cut down the flashkits in a volley of railgun fire. Badly wounded and out of cigars, the captain was forced to retreat. It is rumored that Badrock pursues the great and graceful ship to this day, hell-bent on revenge. Perhaps if the Tau had adhered to their usual hit-and-run tactics, they would still have carried the day, but Commander Farsight was known for his aggression and martial pride. The bloodiest battle was yet to come. As the Battle of the Northern Enclaves escalated, Groggs embarked upon perhaps the most cunning plan yet. Central to the plan was the concept of retreat, a tactic all but unheard of in Orc culture. If it weren't for the large number of Blood Axe war bosses in Grog's employ, he would have never carried it off. As the forces of Commander Farsight pressed forward, the Orc front line fell back, hooting and hollering and clutching their heads. The Tau forces, caught in the thrill of the hunt, overextended themselves. Suddenly, the remainder of the Orc forces ambushed them from either side, closing up the Tau hunter cadres like a pair of giant green jaws. The Tau High Command were shocked to the core. Their forces had been outmaneuvered and trapped by the brutish alien invaders. They scrambled reinforcements to evacuate Commander Farsight, but Grog's war machine was too vicious. The war chief and his boys pursued the retreating Tau back to their base, burning it to the ground and looting as many Tau weapons as they could. With every bit of Deca they found, Grog's boys became more of a threat, and soon they were tooled up with more highly powered weaponry than even the greediest flashkits could wish for. The tide had turned, and it was now likely to turn back. Since that day, many more warbands have flocked to the war chief's banner. Grog has taken 3 Sept worlds in the space of a year, locked in a war of attrition that the Orcs can afford, but the Tau cannot. No matter how many times Farsight and his cadre cut down the Orcs, more follow close behind, as new armies of the Greenskins make their slow but deadly approach. This is the nature of the Greenskin culture. Once word spreads of a good fight, peace becomes a distant memory. So it is that the Tau Sept worlds are constantly embattled by the Greenskins of the Eastern Fringe, their fight for expansion, now a simple war for survival. The Death Corps of Krieg would get another shot at destroying Xenos during the Taros campaign, an Imperial military campaign fought by the 4,621st Imperial Guard Army and elements of the Adeptus Astartes to reclaim the arid Imperial mining world of Taros from the Tau Empire and its crude and Guevesa allies of the Taros Planetary Defense Force. Elements from the 19th Krieg Armored Regiment under the command of Colonel Weidmark were to take part later in the campaign as they were unavailable for the initial assault, having found an STC containing the last season of Game of Thrones, thus being severely upset. To make matters worse, the campaign was ultimately unsuccessful for the Imperial forces due to high amounts of casualties, and Taros remained in the possession of the Tau Empire, who renamed it Tros.
And those were 40 facts on Tau warfare. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. More Xeno lore to come. If there is a specific Xeno race that you guys would like us to cover, please comment down in the comment section below. If you see a comment with a race that you also want to hear about, thumb it up just to help us out. We want to get a feel for which Xeno species is the most favored before we go out there creating lore. We really want to flesh out the ones that are most popular. So please comment down in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.